Okay, somebody's not muted over there. Let's see, we still have.
No, the sound must be off too.
No, I'm not connected. No.
Are you sure?
Yes, I'm muted. I'm muted.
No, but sound too. I have to kill the sound.
You can be muted and still hear. I can leave. I'll leave.
No.
We still have a minute or two before we get started.
Volume 0.
There we go.
Excellent.
That's better.
I can't connect.
Okay.
I'm not crazy about it.
So as we gather, we got a minute or two left. Hello, Joanna. Come on in.
You want me to?
Yes, yes. You're helping with the chat function in case we need it and the poll. Our tech support is here. Wardens are here. And hopefully all of you at home can see me. We're give it just a minute or two more while we have a couple of people that are still setting up here, but we will be able to get started shortly. And if you're watching via Facebook or YouTube, you will not be able to vote, but you will be able to hear and see the proceedings so that you know what all we're talking about and what all we're going to be doing in the next year. So I'm going to put us on mute for just one more minute while we have some people finally kind of coming in, and then we'll get started in about a minute. Okay, we are going to go ahead and get started with our meeting. Joanna, just let me know when you're in and I'll
Sorry,
that.
yeah.
This is the 2022 annual parish meeting of All Saints Episcopal Church. And I call this meeting to order at 11:32 a.m. Let's have our opening prayer. The Lord be with you. Let us pray. Almighty and ever-living God, source of all wisdom and understanding, be present with those who take counsel for the renewal and mission of your church. Teach us in all things to seek first your honor and glory. Guide us to perceive what is right, and grant us both the courage to pursue it and the grace to accomplish it. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
The appointment of our parliamentarian and secretary pro tem, we have asked Lauren DeSarno as clerk of the vestry to serve as our parliamentarian and secretary for this meeting, and she has agreed. So Lauren DeSarno is hereby appointed in the role of parliamentarian and secretary, and will keep the minutes for our meeting. We have a quorum both in person and online, and so the meeting can now begin. The minutes from our 2021 meeting from last year are in your annual report, which you can find online, or hopefully which you have in front of you if you have not gotten it online. Our first vote will be an approval of minutes. So once everybody has had a chance to look those over, if they have not already done so, we would entertain a motion to approve the minutes from our 2021 meeting. If you have a question, or throughout the meeting, if you have a question or a comment, please use the chat feature, and we will get to your question. Or yeah, you can let us know if you would like to say something, but please don't just unmute yourselves, because we want to keep this as organized as possible. So let us know if you have a question or a comment in chat, and then we will get to you.
I am up online.
We have a motion to approve by Sally Pettit. We need a second. David Jeevry has seconded. Those in person, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Those who are attending online, you should be able to vote in the poll at this time. We have a unanimous vote online, and 14 out of 18 participants have voted in favor, which means that there are 18 participating online who are voting members, but out of those, 14 have voted in favor. Michelle?
I didn't vote online because I voted here, so I look
Oh,
like I'm
okay.
online, but I'm here.
Okay,
I didn't vote because I don't.
good. So we have some crossover with people that are attending both online and in person. So the motion carries. The 2021 minutes have been approved. Thank you. We now move on to the Wardens Report, and that is Michelle. Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. Oh, sorry, we're just making sure our sound is okay. We're good? Okay. I would like to acknowledge our two new members last year, David Givry and Carol Blake. Carol was also a go-getter and joined our finance committee and choir as well. So she joined several of our committees to Lorna Sharno, our clerk, Jerry Kimberly McAlinden, Art Richardson, Natalie Krauser, and Sally Pettit round off the rest of your vestry members. And my report is included, and I don't want to read it verbatim, but I actually want to focus on something that many of the parishioners may not know, and that is necessarily vestry got together 3 times in the fall with Canon Rob Drosty, and the whole idea was talking about our church growth and what we can do at All Saints. And I can say these meetings were very moving to everyone. So we hear this all the time from Bishop Stokes. The primary purpose of the church is to form disciples of Jesus Christ to participate in God's mission in the world. And Canon Drosty really reminded us that God is present in everything that we do for the church. So all of our meetings, when we get together, when we painstakingly talk about our budget, and we make the approvals for different committees and community people to come into the church, our physical church brings us together. It brings our community together, and we do it so that we can all be with him and one another. And everyone is on a spiritual journey, and you may not know whether you've been here 40 years, whether you've been here 4 months, we're all on a spiritual journey. I don't think anyone's is complete. And one of the things he asked us to do is just reach out and just say, how can I pray for you? And, reach out to the person sitting next to you, reach out to the person you're in the pew with. And everyone has struggles behind their smiling faces, their bright eyes. Everyone has a struggle, and they don't necessarily have to get into it and get deep, but they can just say, oh, thank you for asking. Could you pray for me for this? And we did that at vestry, and I can't tell you the number of people who reached out to me about non-vestry issues just to say, how am I? And so if we could do that as a parish moving forward, truly in everything that we do. And two issues that you may not be aware of that were very different this year. Vestry approved of our renewal of the Game of Chance license. So this was something that had relapsed a couple of years ago. It was a lot of paperwork. Thank you very much to Stuart Solsky and other various members, and John Brewer helped secure all that in the end. So those of you who've been in the church for a long time may remember different games of chance that we did. We hope that this will bring about some much needed funds to help support different programs in the church. And the other thing that was unique is that many of you have already seen it, but thanks to Beverly and Jerry Shea, we now have a baby grand piano that's right behind Susanna, nicely covered and protected. But that generous gift was also something that was out of the ordinary, approved by vestry, and will be wonderful to the community and the parish at large. So those were 2 things that were very out of the ordinary. The basement flooded in the nor'easter. We have been soliciting bids in terms of addressing those, and that will be done the first quarter of this year. We're going to address that so the rooms can be used again. People can come in and our outside community group is planning to use that. And so those are the major things. So I'm joyous to be with you all on your spiritual journey. And please let me know when I see you how I can pray for you. Thank you.
And thank you for that, Michelle, and thank you everyone for listening. This is now the rector's address, and I think all of you have that in front of you if you have the parish report, but just a few things I wanted to kind of expound on while we're here. It has been a challenging year, as 2021 and 2020 have been both very challenging years, some for the same reasons and some for others. I preached a couple of weeks ago that there are a lot of people here in our parish who really are struggling and suffering and in pain for a multitude of different reasons. We have a huge number of graduating seniors from high school this year. And if it is a lot of pressure to work with that in normal circumstances, I want you to take a moment and consider the parents and the families of all of these people that are struggling with it during pandemic tide. And so please keep our families, all of our families, especially with children in school, in your prayers right now. It is very difficult to be a child. It's very difficult to be a parent, and it's very difficult to consider sending your children out into a world that has struggled as much as ours has in the past couple of years. In the midst of that, we have continued to gather. We have our masks on. I know not everybody loves walking into church with our face coverings on, but we have all learned to convey loads of meaning from the top of the mask up. And so I can see the smiles, I can see the love, and I can also see the pains and the struggles in your eyes when you come to be part of our community. But you'll also notice that over the past few weeks especially, and I'm going to continue to do this, I'm going to be talking about our need for each other, which really dovetails with what Michelle has just had to say and what the vestry has learned in the fall, which is we don't know the extent of other people's pain. We don't know the extent of other people's celebrations, but we owe it to each other to ask. We owe it to each other to pray with each other and to ask people, is there something I can do for you? How can I help you on your spiritual journey? How can I bring you and myself closer to God in a time where we really, really need that? There are churches all over our diocese that have struggled mightily with feeling unified and with feeling as though they are part of something together. There are colleagues of mine that are at the ends of their ropes because of disputes in the church about pandemic protocol, about how to keep people together, about how to separate people safely. We are not one of those parishes. And I emphasize this to you. Every year we have an annual meeting. I want to make sure that all of you know that we are unique in our care for each other and unique in the way that you care for me and for Fred and for Elaine, our parish administrator, and for all of the people that are part of the system that make All Saints what it is. We are unlike any other church I know of. In the midst of all of these trying times, we have not only stayed together, we've reached out more. And due to a lot of great help from David Kelly and from our new parish administrator, Elaine Coop, and from a revitalized outreach committee, we are going farther and farther beyond our own walls, which is exactly the way that it should be. And because of the work that we're doing, we are actually attracting people who want to live into God's call to them. That is remarkable, and it's something that we need to do. I gave us a gentle word of caution about the challenges that we face coming up. We know that while we have an incredibly strong core group of people here at All Saints, we have to continue to go outward and upward and bring in new people, not only because we need them, but because they need us, because this community needs us. And because the more that we do with our outreach and with our worship, with our music, with the way that we feed people both physically and spiritually, we're reaching people in Scotch Plains and Fanwood and Plainfield and Westfield and Summit and all over the surrounding community who long to be fed in that way. It goes beyond anything that what our average Sunday attendance would be able to tell us. It goes beyond anything that even our budget would be able to tell us. What it does is make us God's church, God's people that are continually seeking to do more and to serve more. I am so proud of us. I am so grateful for us. And I sure I said this last year, but I'll say it again. I cannot imagine having to deal with all that we've had to deal with for the past few years without the company and strength of this place. And I make sure to emphasize, if anyone says to me, you know, tries to thank me and to tell me that I am doing a good job, I'm grateful to hear it, but I always want to emphasize to whoever has that to say that this is a group effort. It wouldn't matter what I did if the rest of you were not supportive of the work that we do and supportive of me and supportive of each other. This is a group effort. I say it a million times all the time, but I thank you for that. I thank you for being strong. I thank you for being vulnerable and for sharing that vulnerability with me and with each other, and for allowing each other the gift of being able to support one another in the work that we do, especially in this past time. So I thank you for that. And that's a little different from the rector's report that I submitted, but it is from the heart, and I am so grateful. We'll continue with our nominating committee and elections. We need to elect diocesan convention delegates. The diocesan convention this year will be online. It's virtual. It's one day only, and it will be on March 5th. That's a Saturday. So we need to elect 3 representatives for our diocesan convention and 1 alternate in case.
So that's my fault. Our bylaws stipulate we need 3 alternates. for
3?
each meeting, yeah, so
Oh.
I checked the bylaws, so I was remiss last year, because we need 3 delegates and 3 alternates.
Thank you. There's a correction to that. We need 3 delegates and 3 alternates for those delegates to serve at our annual convention, which will be online. It is a more or less full day event on Saturday, March 5th. I believe last year it was from 9 or 10.
9 to 3.
Yeah, 9 to 3. So it's not onerous, but we do need 3 delegates and 3 alternates, and we will accept nominations at this time. Michelle?
I nominate, I will sign the convention.
Okay. Michelle has offered to be one of our delegates, so please make a note of that. Anyone else? Jerry Shea, alternate or delegate?
What's needed, I guess.
Delegate.
Right now.
Jerry Shea and Michelle have offered themselves as delegates. We need 1 more. Chris? Okay, alternate. Okay, so
It's same thing, whatever.
well, let's just get 6 people. How about
Fair
that?
enough.
Okay.
So we've got Michelle, we've got Jerry, we've got Chris, we have Lauren. That's 4. 2 more? Anyone? Anyone?
Art can be an alternate.
Thank you, Art.
Oh,
That
Art,
was Art.
okay. And Jessica. Okay, so our slate is now full. We have Michelle, Jerry, Chris, Art, Jessica, and Lauren. And our next poll will be voting on that slate as a whole.
I think you need to designate who is a delegate and who is an alternate.
Okay, so we'll say Jerry and Michelle and Lauren as our delegates. Art, Chris, and Jess will be alternates. Okay, so the poll for that is up, and for those that are attending in person, this is a motion. Oh, yeah. Could someone please have a motion to elect the slate as presented? David Kelly moves, Michelle seconds. All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Right. Members have voted and the motion carries, or the motion carries, and those are our candidates, our delegates for our diocesan convention. Thank you. Moving on. Nominations for our Watchung Convocation. These are meetings that happen, I think they're only once a year. Most of those, again, are virtual. Our convocation meetings have been happening online since 2020, and they will continue to do so. 1, 2, 3.
This meeting is also a weeknight meeting.
This is a weeknight meeting. Thank you for pointing that out. That has not yet been scheduled for our Watchung Convocation. That's for anyone that doesn't know, our convocation, the diocese is broken up into smaller regional convocations of churches kind of in our immediate area. And so our convocation would be Plainfield and Scotch Plains and Lebanon and just other churches in our area. So one meeting during a weeknight, and that will require 1, 2, 3,
6 again.
6 again, 3 and 3. So if you can join us for our watch on convocation, Michelle, thank you. David Kelly, thank you. Mary, thank you. That's 3. And then 3 alternates.
Alternate.
Bob O'Kell, alternate. Lauren, alternate. One more. Joanna, thank you. So our next vote will be to elect our 6 convocation representatives, 3 delegates and 3 alternates. Our delegates are Michelle, David, Mary. Alternates are Bob, Lauren, and Joanna. I would entertain a motion to approve that slate. Joe Triola has made the motion. Need a second? Anyone? Thank you. Okay. So all in favor of electing those 6 people for our representatives and alternates, in favor? Any opposed? Thank you.
And this also comment, there are no vestry members rolling off, so we don't need any vestry delegates.
Thank you. As Michelle's pointed out, thank goodness, we don't have any vestry members rolling off this year, so that's one fewer thing that we have to accomplish at this annual meeting. Okay, the votes are in and the motion has carried for those 6 people to serve as our representatives for the Watchung convocation. Thank you. At this time, I turn it over to John Brewer. And John, let me make you a co-host so that you can share your screen if you would like. And please unmute yourself. Where'd he go? There we go. And John, if you're talking, we can't hear you.
I was double muted. Can you hear me now?
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Good. All right. I will scroll down to this summary presentation, but read from the actual financial statements. We budgeted in 2021 on the assumption that we would not have access to our facilities. So we did not include a budget for facility rental or for some of the other things that normally come with physical attendance at church. In the event, we were able to reopen and regain use of our sanctuary and Lee Hall and so forth. So our actual results were about a $3,000 improvement in pledge income versus budget, $6,300 in rental income, and about $1,700 in open and holiday offerings, which are strongly associated with physical attendance. We had budgeted for contributions of $10,600, largely because that was a carryover number from the end of 2020, which we put in the endowment fund until we needed it in 21. Our actual results included that number and an additional $5,000 of pledge income. So on this line here, current income, we budgeted for $150,000 and we actually had an actual result of 164 and an improvement of almost 10%. Operating expenses behaved relatively well. The budget included some numbers that the diocese obliges us to report, but which are rarely used under the headings of continuing education and professional allowance. Under office expense, we were down below budget by over $3,000. So that was because of transition from Ellen to Elaine and budget hours that weren't used. So our let's see, did we have any other significant operating expenditure savings? The gas bill is higher. Our cleaning bill is a little bit lower because we reorganized the cleaning contract in the middle of the year. The other relatively smaller changes. So on the operating balance line, where we had a budgeted deficit of almost $60,000, we came in at a deficit of 29,000, which was less than half of what we had expected on that line. We did draw down the normal annual draw from the endowment fund of 25,500, which left us with a very modest deficit that was funded by a extremely small drawing from the special endowment fund provision and a reduction in our cash balances from 10,000 at the start of 21 to 8,000 at the end. A year that, broadly speaking, represents a return to normal, although as you'll see from our later discussion on the budget, we hope to be able to do better in fundraising and in facility rentals now that we're pretty confident that we'll have the access to the facility for the whole year. I would be happy to entertain questions now, or if on reflection and a deeper reading of these compelling numbers, you want to get in touch with me by email, that's also fine.
Thank you, John. And we do open it up for any questions or discussion before we move to approve your report. Hearing and seeing no questions or discussion, I would entertain a motion to approve the report of the treasurer for 2021.
Sure.
Do I have a second? Okay. All righty. John, may I have my screen back, please?
I beg your pardon. What do I do? Stop share. Yes.
Actually, don't worry about it. I can access it. Thank
Yep,
you.
I'm done.
Okay. This vote is to approve the treasurer's report. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Motion carries and the treasurer's report is approved. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Our next item of business is the endowment fund report from Stuart Solsky. Stuart, let me make you a co-host so that you may share your screen. You should be able to share a screen. Do you want to, or do you want me to pull up the endowment fund report for people here?
Yeah, why don't you please pull it up? Thank you.
Give me just a minute. Go ahead and start talking, Stuart, while I try and get this organized. You have to give me a minute.
Sure. Okay, well, 2021 was a very good year for the endowment fund. The market value at the end of the year was $1,130,778, which I believe is the highest it's ever been. This is a very good result, especially because at the beginning of the pandemic in 2020, our market value was way down, and since then it's recovered by over $375,000. So that's very good news. The other piece of good news is that our investment income has increased back to approximately what it was before the pandemic started. So the endowment fund is in pretty good shape at this point. The first table summarizes or lists some of the key figures that relating to the endowment fund. If you look at line 3, that's the increase in the market value from the prior year. It's $173,000 approximately, an 18.1% increase. The investment earnings were almost $53,000. That's line 4. Net income, which is the gross income versus or minus the expenses was almost $41,000. And in row 6, we have the total return of the endowment fund of 19.13%. That consists of the income yield, which is the investment income that we get, and plus the unrealized capital gain of 14.23%, which is the increase in the value of the account of the fund. And line 7 is the benchmark that we compare the performance of the endowment fund against, which is the bond index, which actually was negative this year, or in 2021, of negative 1.54%, whereas our yield was almost 5%. So that was very good news. On the net income side, we've got this next table, which line 1 is the investment earnings that we've already talked about. Line 2 is the donations, which are donations from the parish, which we're very grateful for, because those help to fund some of the capital expenditures and the deficit in the operating budget that we have. If we go to the next table, it shows the expenses that the endowment fund had, and the total amount of the expenses was approximately $16,000. That's lines 1 through 9. And just a reminder, the purpose of the endowment fund is to fund these capital expenses, as well as line 10, which is a transfer to the operating account, which is basically the parish's operating deficit, the amount by which the expenses of the parish exceed the income of the parish, which John talked about a few minutes ago. So the total amount of expenses was approximately $42,000. Now, the outlook for next year, or for this year, I should say, is pretty good, at least if we look at the operating budget and the transfer to the operating account that are contemplated. The estimate, or the transfer, or the deficit that's contemplated, is about $43,000, $43,500. So if we have income, which is pretty much the same as last year, which is what it's budgeted to do, we will cover that deficit, which is good news. What it doesn't allow much wiggle room for is capital expenses. Capital expenses are difficult to predict, but typically are over $20,000 annually, and the amount of that is left over from covering the operating deficit would be less than $10,000. So we're hoping that we'll be able to contain the capital expenses this year, but if necessary, we'll have to try to increase the investment income. Hopefully there'll be some donations to the endowment fund, and if necessary, we'll have to liquidate some investments. Finally, I'd like to thank the Endowment Fund Committee, which consists of Tom Loop, John Brewer, Jerry Shea, Neama Jacobs, and myself. We didn't need to meet this year, but we did meet in 2021, but we did meet. We did have some email discussions about the endowment fund, and we decided to stay the course, which proved to be a good decision. We're intending to meet during the first quarter of this year to reevaluate our investments, just to make sure that they're the right investments to get us the income that we need. And I'd like to thank both the people that have donated to the endowment fund, as well as the members of the committee.
Thank you, Stuart. At this time, we would welcome any questions or discussion, questions for Stuart or discussion of the Endowment Fund report as it was just given to us.
Decide the question.
Okay, Chris Harris?
So I know that Michelle mentioned that we haven't got back the estimates for all the work for the basement damage, but I'm expecting that that's going to be a pretty substantial amount of money in our capital fund this coming year. I won't ask specifically how much, because I know it's not determined yet, but could anyone maybe elaborate a little bit more about, how much kind of a hit do we expect?
Okay, Chris Harris is asking about the potential repairs to the basement. As you know, it was damaged during Hurricane Ida, and we are facing having to replace all of the flooring and some of the drywall that was damaged in the flooding that happened down there. We are in the process of getting estimates, and we're also in the process of discussing assistance from FEMA, and FEMA is asking us to go through the Small Business Administration to see about getting a very low interest loan to get that work done. As of right now, we have not made any decisions. The work looks as though it will come in probably around $40,000. Joe, anything to add to that?
No, it's pretty much right on.
That is the short version. John Brewer, would you like to add something to that?
I can't resist making it a longer version, sorry. Yeah, the sort of the consensus likely cost of repairs is $40,000. We are in active discussions with FEMA about a grant funding which would defray those costs. It was FEMA that suggested we were obliged to at least make an application through the SBA, and we're now pursuing that paperwork as well. One of the things we have not yet discussed, but which is, of course, always potentially on the table once we know from which government agencies we may be able to get funding, we might want to actually do a fundraiser specifically focused on covering the cost of this repair and strengthening the endowment fund's ability to respond to these kinds of events in future. But that's, of course, a subject for another day.
Thank you, John, for clarifying that. And thank you, Chris, for asking. Any other questions regarding our endowment fund report?
I have a question.
Carolyn
Do we
Perkins?
not have any insurance coverage?
Carolyn Perkins is asking about insurance coverage for the flooding that happened. We did not have flood insurance. They don't offer it for that. So no, we do not have insurance coverage, but thank you for asking. Lauren? Somebody? I thought, okay. Any other questions or discussion regarding our endowment fund report? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the endowment fund report as given.
So moved.
Mary O'Connor moves, Bob O'Kell second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries and the endowment fund is approved. Report is approved. Thank you, Stuart, very much for all of the work that you've done, and thank you to the endowment fund committee as well. Our committee reports have been filed as part of the annual report. It's not necessary to go over each one in person, but if anyone would like to say anything, Joe, would you like to say anything about the buildings and grounds? I know you're here.
Pretty much touch base on the committee did not meet due to COVID restrictions, and there was not a lot going on because of the lack of use of the buildings, but there were some small projects that I attended to during the year. And then, of course, I hit and we had a lot of work to go on. The other projects that we are not so much dealing with, but slightly dealing with is we are just starting to do a revamp of the nursery. The ceiling in the nursery has been repaired, so now that Victoria Solsky can start her Girl Scout project modernize, clean up, and make that nursery available again for use. Hopefully that's going to be started. I just started out this weekend cleaning out and getting everything cleaned, and that process will begin. So that and the downstairs repair from the flooding are going to be our main focuses this coming year. And then, of course, all the other little things. We did have our yearly fire and boiler inspection, which we get. They will pass. We're going to make sure with that. Everything's just status quo. We just keep trucking along.
Thank you, Joe. Are there any other people that would like to speak to their reports or any questions about the reports as they have been filed as part of the paperwork of our annual report? Any points of clarification? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the committee reports as filed. Chris? Charlie, second. All in favor of approving the committee reports as filed? Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Thank you. I turn the meeting back over to John Brewer for a discussion of our 2022 budget. And you should still have the screen sharing capabilities, John.
There we go. Keeping in mind that 2021 was a kind of an unusual year, preceded in fact by an unusual 2020. We did well to produce a pledge income of 136,000 commitment for 2022. I'm happy to report that since that number, we've received 2 additional pledges, and I would simply encourage anyone in the church who has not yet pledged to keep the cards and letters coming. Our budget assumes a slight increase in facility rentals versus 2021's actual numbers. And as I think I'd explained, in 2021, we had a carryover of contribution income from the prior year. This $5,000 figure represents a more normal annualized rate. We expect, as Stuart said, to draw $43,500 from the endowment. So our receipts will actually be about $7,000 higher than the budgeted receipts than the actual in 2021. On the expenditure side, the first thing to highlight is the diocese recommended a cost of living adjustment for rectors of 4.5%. Reverend Susanna has declined that increase, so the clergy salary remains unchanged with the exception of and not unexpected increase in medical insurance premiums and the reinstatement of the $5,500 of continuing ed and professional allowance that the diocese requires that we budget, but that we are unlikely, I think, to spend. Other things remain largely unchanged. Housing expense similarly. The office expense goes up by about $2,300, largely because we have reinstated the full 52 weeks of secretary salary. In buildings and grounds, I have increased provisions for electricity and gas just because what we saw in terms of higher utility bills towards the end of 21. Garbage and contracted services is budgeted to go down because the provision in 2021 included some paying off some of the accumulated 2020 bills. We like our cleaning service, but I must confess that their billing and invoicing systems leave a lot to be desired. Snow removal is reinstated at a normal level. Worship expense is largely reinstating previous budget amounts. Education, outreach, hospitality similarly. to go back to this analytical format, we're budgeting a decline in our current income, but that's largely because relative to 2021 and the unusual amount we carried forward in terms of contributions. The operating balance budget goes up to a deficit of $56,000, which I don't expect us to actually produce in 2022, because there'll be some spending we don't do. Funding that with the drawdown from the normal drawdown from the endowment fund and the $18,000 special allocation gets us to a deficit of $12,000, which would be funded by drawing down our opening cash and by not spending about $5,000 of what's mandated in the budget. I have characterized row G here as a sustainable balance, which is to say our operating revenues less operating expenses and the normal draw from the endowment fund, which is a little bit less than 50% of the endowment fund's investment income. A sustainable deficit of $2,000 or $3,000 is something we can work with. A deficit of 30,000 is clearly not sustainable, but I don't think that's where we're going to turn out in 2022. I think 2022, with any luck, is going to look pretty much like that, which is, I think, sustainable over the long run. I yield the floor for questions or discussion.
Question from Carolyn Perkins.
What did we get for income for the silent auction?
Carolyn would like to know what our income for the silent auction in 2021 was. That should be in the treasurer's report, Carolyn. There should be a line item for that from the treasurer's report.
Actually, there may not be, because
Okay.
it's clubbed in with other fundraisers. In other words,
I see. Okay.
the fundraiser dinner produced gross receipts of $2,118, against which there was an expense for the catering, which was it was $165. But I don't have immediately at hand the breakdown between the dinner ticket receipts and the silent auction. Caroline, I'd be happy to send you an email afterwards when I can open my file.
Thank you, Carolyn. Mary?
I noticed under education expense, books, publication, and films have a budget amount of $900, which seems quite a bit higher than the previous 3 years, and I'm wondering what that reflects.
Inertia. that is the amount we have budgeted in previous years for things like Sunday school materials
And licensing.
and licensing of films we may broadcast, things like that.
Okay, so the amounts in previous years, they've been budgeted at a higher level, but just were not spent. So
Exactly. Yep.
Okay.
Thank you, Mary. Any other questions or discussion for the budget for 2022? Hearing and seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the budget for 2022. Bob O'Kell moves. David Kelly seconds. Oh, man. The one poll that didn't make it in there. And it's that one. Hold on. Let me create that for just a minute. Talk amongst yourselves, please. The big one, and I didn't do it.
Susanna?
Yes. Are you going to sing for us while I do this?
No, but as a matter of procedure, the budget is approved actually by the vestry at its meeting,
That's why we put it in there.
and is only reported to the annual meeting for information.
Thank you for the reminder, John. We do not need to approve the budget at our annual meeting. It has already been approved, but it is merely a sharing of the budget that was approved by our vestry. Thank you for that reminder. And as a matter of fact, when I look at our slides, there is no vote for approving the budget. So I did do it right. I just forgot that I did it right because it happens so rarely.
I don't want to unmute myself. Can you thank John on behalf of us for all the things?
Oh, yes. And John Brewer has served as our treasurer for quite some time. When I preached this morning about people who know how to do budget spreadsheets, working with people who are terrified and confused by numbers on a page, I was talking about John Brewer and I was talking about me. And so we thank you for the administration, and you are in our list of people to be recognized as we move forward with our meeting. But we really cannot thank John enough for the work he does. It is an everyday affair to come in here and make sure that the payroll is completed and make sure that all of the vendors are getting paid on time and to make sure that all the numbers are straight and the Altar Guild has what they need and our music program has what it needs and our day-to-day operations are running in a way that is smooth and good. So I will ask you to hold your applause, but when you see John, thank him and keep him and his family in your prayers always, because
thank you for that.
True gift, true gift. And with that being said, what a wonderful segue into our recognitions. I have here not only suitable for framing, but in fact already framed, a number of certificates of appreciation that we are giving on behalf of All Saints Church. The first one, and so many of them are actually in person, which is wonderful. Joe Triola and his loving service as the chair of our Buildings and Grounds Committee, as an usher, and as a faithful servant. Thank you, Joe. He has worked overtime this year, as have most of the people that are part of our parish, but we thank Joe especially. We also thank Lauren DeSarno. Loving service as a Sunday school teacher, one of the new heads of our youth group and our leader, a clerk of the vestry, and as a faithful servant of Christ. We thank you, Lauren, for all of the work that you have done. Robin Sampson is not here, but we thank Robin also for her loving service as a Sunday school teacher, both online and in person, and as a faithful servant of Christ. So when you see Robin, please tell her thank you from all of us, especially our families. I know that Kevin Walsh is joining us online. And one of the reasons that things are able to run as smoothly as they do with our technology is because of Kevin Walsh. If you are enjoying our camera work, if you're enjoying the improved sound that we have and the computers that we are able to work with and a number of other things in the area of technology, including writing the technology report and working very closely with Joanna and Chris and our other people on our tech crew. This is for Kevin. We know you're tuning in online, so this is for Kevin Walsh in appreciation for his loving service as an organizer and procurer of technology, a tireless source of technological setup and support, and as a faithful servant of Christ, we present this to you, Kevin, and we thank you so much. So we have a chat. Just see what this is. Okay. Joanna Hurley, who is here in person, which is good. Again, if you like what we have been able to offer in the field of technology and the way that things run smoothly and that we can have a Sunday service where I'm able to concentrate on being your pastor and your preacher and not your tech support, thanks be to God. That's in part to Joanna Hurley. We give her thanks for her loving service as head of the Altar Guild, as a guide for our technological advances, an organizer of our online services, and as a faithful servant of Christ. We thank you, Joanna. And while we're on the subject of technology, Chris Harris also has been an incredible asset to us in the field of technology. He is stepping down as our youth group leader, but still is remaining on point to help Lauren DeSarno and Aaron Wasick as they take on the youth group duties. But Chris, we thank you for your loving service as a guide for our technological advances, an organizer of our online services, a coordinator for the special concerts that we were able to maintain even in the midst of the pandemic, a mentor for our youth program, and as a faithful servant of Christ. We thank you. We're getting lots of applause and thanks in our chat as well. For John Brewer, whom we know is joining us online, I've already said lots and lots about what he does for us, but it's not just the numbers that John is able to take care of. He calls people and asks them how they're doing. He asks how he can pray for them. He is as important as a pastor as he is in any kind of administrative role. He is one of the many right hands for whom I am grateful, and without whom I wouldn't be able to do the work that I do. So John, in appreciation for your tireless work as our parish treasurer, the chair of the finance committee, a member of the endowment committee, and a faithful servant of Christ, we give you thanks for the work that you do. For Jerry Shea, who for the past almost 2 years now has been keeping diligent and meticulous records of who is here in person when we had people here in person, who is online, and we continue to have people online. I would not be able to put the parish report together if I wasn't able to go back through the emails and see how Jerry has been keeping track of everything. Not only that, but he serves as one of our wardens. He is also on the Buildings and Grounds Committee. He does a number of things here. And so for your service, your loving service as a warden of the vestry, the usher in charge of in-person and online head counts, and as a faithful servant of Christ, we present you this and we thank you with all our hearts. And finally, for Michelle Smith-Crona, who has served against probably her better judgment sometimes as our senior warden before the pandemic, during the pandemic, and in the midst of it even now. Again, another one of my right hands, not only a warden and a parishioner, but also a dear friend and someone I know that I can call when I am in a panic about church-related items, and who can talk me off of a ledge, for all of the work that she does and for all of the things she does for all of us, for your loving service as our warden, an endless source of support to our rector, an active minister in our altar guild, lay reader, and hospitality ministries, and as a faithful servant of Christ, we thank you. We have, I was putting these together and I realized I could literally be here all day handing out awards, and I would love to do that, but even if you didn't receive a physical certificate of appreciation, every single one of you is a minister here, and I rely on every single one of you. We all do. We all depend on each other, and we're all so grateful for each other. But a special round of applause for all those whom we've been able to recognize today. If you can believe it, that's all we had to do this morning. And I know that the renewal of baptismal vows is part of the annual report, but we just did that a couple of weeks ago at the beginning of January. And so I'm going to waive the renewal of baptismal vows for this meeting. But I take them home with you and look them over, because these are our marching orders. This is part of our work as the church, to continually refresh ourselves about the work that God gives us to do through our baptisms and through our service to each other and to God. In the meantime, I will give you the blessing, and I'm grateful for your attendance here, for the good work that we've done, for the good work that we look forward to, for all of the questions and discussion and clarification of everything that's coming up in the year to come and all that's gone on in the year past. I pray with all of my heart that this year brings us true companionship, that we are able to gather together in person the way that we love to do. I pray with all of my heart that Mardi Gras brings us into this space with good music and king cake and a low country shrimp boil and all of the things, parties and crowns and masks and in-person activities. I bring that Lent brings us rest and peace and inner seeking and renewal, that Easter brings us true joy and fellowship. I pray that the year to come is kind to us, that those who need resources find them, and that they find them here, whether they're parishioners here or not. I pray that each one of us finds blessing in our family and in our friends, that we are able to rely on each other more and more, that we are able to surround ourselves with the presence of God as God is made known to us here, and bring it out into our communities. Most of all, I pray with all my heart that God blesses each and every one of us in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, that we may go forth and do the work that God has given us to do. Amen.
Amen.
At this time, barring any other questions or discussion, I would entertain a motion to adjourn the annual meeting for 2022.
So moved.
Mary makes the motion.
Woo, second.
Wow, okay.
That was enthusiastic.
Who was it?
I think that was Natalie. No, it was Kimberly. Who was it? It was somebody really perky and happy.
It was Natalie. I'm totally willing
Natalie.
to out myself, but not that it wasn't a great meeting. It was a woohoo because I loved the recognition, and every one of these individuals is so really deserving. And that was just a nice way to conclude.
Agreed. All those in favor of adjourning our 2022 annual meeting?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Our meeting is now adjourned. Go in peace to love and serve the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Thanks be to God.
What is that Zoom meeting?